Alright, what's going on, everybody? And welcome to Hunt Showdown. This was on sale on the PlayStation Store just the other day, so I figured I would give this a try. After seeing some things on online about it, PC players giving it a shot. So here I'm just in the initial training section, just kind of getting used to the controls. I decided to go with the Hunter setup just for the little more true to the game setup style. Just for the more true to the game, the way that it was meant to be played, I decided to give that a shot. Here's me kind of fiddling with the weapon wheel, trying to figure out what's what and how things work, how my weapons work, how you aim. In order to aim with the original Hunter style, you need to hit the left trigger while your weapon's in the low ready position, and not only do you hit the left trigger, in order to aim down the sights, you have to click in the right thumbstick. So here's me just kind of figuring that out, how the melee mechanics work, and gonna see about getting into some fights here. So here's the dark sight. This is what you can use to find various clues. As you can see, there was a group of dogs in a pen and that injured horse, and they can actually be used to your detriment to alert not only the zombies but other hunters to your position. So here I am, just kind of fighting off some of the zombies, learning the game. So far, I really enjoy how slow-paced this is. The reloads are slow. The character moves slowly. It kind of reminds me of Rainbow Six Siege in a way, because everything is very slow and very deliberate, and I truly enjoy that. So here, unfortunately, I put down the horse just for keeping it from alerting the enemies. Although my gunfire has probably already done me a whole lot more detriment than that. For being an open world, or at least a semi-open world, there's not really a whole lot to find. Not really a whole lot like in the world, except for ammo pickups, some situationally found melee weapons and things like that. But other than those, not really a whole lot going on. What I really enjoy about this game is sort of the permadeath feature. Now I'm trying out my primary. When you die in this game, you don't just make your one hunter and that's your hunter and that's it. All the hunters are generated or recruited, however you want to put it, and they all have kind of their own special abilities, all their own loadout, their own items, etc. And when your character dies, not in the training modes, of course, but when your character dies, they're dead, and you lose their entire loadout. Now, the I can't think of the name of the currency in this game, but when you die, money is relatively easy to come by. So anything that you lose, in terms of dying in the game and then having to restart from scratch again, anything you lose is relatively easy to replace, all things considered. So here I am, giving the melee weapons a shot. From what it seems, the melee weapons swing a whole lot faster than you would think. You would think that the animation has to complete before you can begin another one, but that's just not the case. So here I am getting jumped, do a little weapon bash, trying to land a headshot. Obviously, once I get to the actual playing of the game, this is not what I'll be doing, but just trying to get an idea. Use the knife a little bit here just to see how exactly that all works out. The shadows that are projected on the ground, I really like the touch of the shadows, but they look a little wonky. Like just something about the outline doesn't look quite right. I like the way the melee weapons are set up. How you've got the fast swing, then you've got the charge up. Now, if you notice what I was saying earlier about melee weapons, the animation not completing first, That's what I'm talking about right there. Um, the animation is actually, you're able to more or less interrupt it, so you can, swing a whole lot faster. Now, I about walked into that catacomb, but I was just trying to find that clue. So now I'm just kind of jumping through some rubble like a moron. But I really enjoy the game, and I'm excited to at least give it a shot, figure out what's what with it. I know it's pretty popular on PC, and the fact that it's just moved to console has made this a whole lot more accessible. Because I do not possess a computer. Well, at least not one capable of running something like this. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, I was trying to see how exactly that, Hipfire marker looks, and it looks like it's pretty precise. There's not, it's not like a Call of Duty game where, if you've got steady aim on, the Hipfire spread is non-existent, and, the bullets all go straight, even though the marker doesn't look that way. It looks like the Hipfire spread is pretty true to life. From what I can tell, the hitboxes appear to be pretty precise. Not to the point where it would be a detriment to the game, but it appears that the hitboxes do enhance some of the realisticness. I've noticed with games like Killing Floor 2, the hitboxes and whatnot are incredibly forgiving. You won't even be aiming, directly at a head, but, you'll pull the trigger and, you'll see the head pop, and it's just, as cool as that is, and as fine as that is, it doesn't bother me that much. It does not lend itself very well to, the realism factor. Now here I'm just kind of standing for a minute, I'm not really doing anything. I was actually picking food up. And there's a kind of a harsh cut here from where I was standing out in that field, and now I'm inside of this barn. I went out and picked up the food, and there was just a long period of where I was just standing in a field. So I believe this is where I find the third clue, and I go ahead and face off against the spider. This is either the last clue or... Yeah, this is the last clue, but I'm not sure if I'm going to face off against the spider just yet. Yeah. So, the clues, I really like the way this works, and I feel like once I get an opportunity to play, not only with somebody, and now I was trying to figure out how exactly the map worked. I wasn't sure if there, it was possible that, now I don't know what happened there, if I fell off the side of that, or what, but, I'm not. I was trying to figure out whether or not there was some kind of waypoint system, and there really isn't. So you just sort of have to eye the map and make sure you're going in the correct direction, or at least if there is some sort of waypoint system, I've not been able to discern it. So again, I really like how the weapons are kind of held to the side until you make the what do you call it, the necessary movements in order to do so, or in order to fire. Again, this is me kind of fiddling with the map, trying to figure out what's going on. Other than watching some clips here and there, I'm brand new, brand new. I really like how the weapons look. I like the way they feel. I really like how the reload animations look. I like how everything seems like it takes a while, because that's because it does, And I feel like this could be a very, very competitive game. Now, I don't think that this is something that I will end up sinking a great bit of time into, hours and hours and hours and hours. But I do think that this is something that I could lose a weekend in, a weekend, a few days, as long as I have the correct partner. So I'm moving through here. I'm just now figuring out that there is a marking system. If you just sort of tap that that dark vision thing. Now, something that I do dislike, at least to some extent, is the revolver that I have right here isn't exactly working true to its actual design. This right here is a Nagant revolver. I'm not entirely certain of like the year 1895, something of that nature. Number one, the reload animation is a little bit off, but I believe that's just because they reused the reload animation for a good majority of those loading gate revolvers. Just below the barrel there is the ejector rod, an expanded case inside of a cylinder. For a revolver isn't going to just fall out. They can, but if you look at any kind of like revolver in real life, they all have an ejector rod. Even those double action ones, if you look at any kind of reload, somebody will pop the cylinder open and then they'll jam that little pin down and that pushes all the cases, and that's because when the gases are released in the cartridge, it expands those cases somewhat, and an empty case, generally speaking, isn't going to just fall out. And that ejector rod that's just below the barrel there isn't spring loaded like most what I would call modern revolvers. The ejector rod, once you push it, it goes back up on its own on a spring. The one in the Nagant revolver does not do that. It is not spring loaded, and it has to be pushed down and then manually pushed back up. It's also a double action revolver. If you notice with the the weapon animations in this game, is every time he pulls the trigger, he pulls that hammer back. And in pulling that hammer back, every time he pulls the trigger, he pulls the hammer back again. And I'm not really a big fan of that, because that's not how that revolver functioned in real life. It can be shot single action, but the game treats it as though that's its only way of functioning, when in fact the 1895 Nagant revolver is a double action revolver. So you should be able to just pull the trigger and fire it without the need to cock the hammer back. Now, in being a double action revolver, it performs two different actions. Being that not only does it fire with just the trigger being pulled, you can in fact cock the hammer back and release the round that way. Normally speaking, with a lot of double action revolvers, the double action trigger pull will be ungodly heavy with a whole lot of something they call stacking. And the trigger pull will allot out to be like 9 or 10 pounds, something that takes quite a bit of a deliberate action in order to fire. Generally speaking, you are not going to accidentally pull the trigger on a revolver with a 10 to 12 pound trigger pull. It's just not going to happen. But when you cock a revolver back into single action, it now goes from being a 10 to 12 pound trigger pull. It sets the trigger, at the back of the trigger guard, and kind of primes the hammer. Now, instead of a 10 to 12 pound trigger pull, it'll be somewhere along the lines of 2 to 3, depending. Sometimes around 4. And it'll be a nice, crisp, clean break. The stacking has already gone through. The hammer is cocked. And I kind of dislike how this pistol in particular treats itself like it's a single action, when in fact, the real-life counterpart is a double action. Now, with that being said, I just got done with the boss battle right there, Banish the Spider. That's my first attempt. And it was really interesting. I enjoy the way the boss battles work. From what I understand, there's 3 different bosses in the game. but they all work relatively similarly. If you notice right there in that extraction point, there is that group of crows. Now that is something that can be used against you to your detriment. What can happen is when you alert those crows, they fly up over the trees, and somebody who's looking for you can discern your position by where those crows fly away at. It's really cinematic. I believe that if I wasn't playing the training mode or whatever, I would have probably made a more concerted effort into not alerting those crows in moving to the extraction point. So I feel as though that might be a little bit of a rookie mistake. So here I got some blood bonds. That's the name of the currency. I had forgotten. And there's just some objective summaries and things of that nature. But the game is really good. I really enjoy it. I believe here in a moment I'm going to be starting up the advanced training level. At some point, I think I'm going to give the professional training level a shot. I imagine with anything, it'll be like PvP. Will really throw a wrench into it, and there's probably a pretty high skill ceiling for the game. Likely enough, it'll be something along the lines of you're either really good at it or you're not. Now here, it's telling you that you can sign up for some email service or some sort of account with these people. I do not have that, and I'm not going to do it. So here I started up the advanced training session. I mean, if I get a little more into it, I'll probably sign up to it just for the free money. But here's some of the special edition weapons that I had unlocked. I actually bought that trapdoor Springfield, but that 1895 Nagant is something called the Copper. So it just looks a little bit nicer. I believe I also have a knife. I believe the knife is called the Blood Oath, something along those lines. What I really feel like is a big missed opportunity is that the revolver, the Nagant revolver, like on Battlefield 1, when the Nagant revolver is out of ammo, what you can do after firing all 7 shots, it's also unique in the fact that it holds 7 rounds. The empty reload is, it's arguably just a little bit faster than, just reloading all the casings and shells, individually. But the character will actually remove the cylinder from the frame of the gun and put a new cylinder in that's already loaded. And I feel like that could have been something they could have used, because I feel like this gun, while being pretty good, is going to end up being overshadowed by a lot more later, and giving you some sort of special edition items like this. I feel as though that's a bit detrimental, at least to the extent of utilizing the items. So this trapdoor Springfield, I realized that the lever action rifle and the pistols use the exact same ammunition. So rather than having 2 weapons that depleted the exact same ammo, I decided to get one weapon that has rifle ammo and another weapon that uses the pistol rounds, because I feel as though there wouldn't be a great deal of sense in utilizing anything but, because you would just be depleting all your ammo, and by the time you had to switch to your secondary, you'd be out. So I gave my trapdoor Springfield a try. Decided to give it a go. According to the in-game weapon description, here's my first heavy enemy. I had no idea what that was. But according to the in-game description of the weapon, it's incredibly fast to reload. I guess when everything reloads in, the better part of a minute, like this revolver, anything could be considered fast. Um, but I don't believe it to be overly slow. I believe it to be manageable, slightly worse or slightly better than the single shot shotguns. Um, so I'm not really complaining, but yeah, I really enjoy how all of the animations are incredibly well crafted. That is something that really really needs a lot of praise. Especially when it comes to a lot of these what people would call antique firearms. When it comes to a lot of new age stuff, everything has magazines, and there's only so many ways you can animate, pulling a stick out of the bottom of a gun and sticking another one in there. Um, and I really enjoy how all of the animations are a little bit long because, with like a box magazine pistol. Here's me trying the Hipfire spread again, and I just said screw it and shot her in the head. But when it comes to like something like a Glock, with a 15 round magazine, that can be reloaded in a half a second. You drop the magazine and put it in there. But something like a revolver, especially something like this, where each cartridge has to be reloaded individually, it can definitely take some time and a whole lot of time. Even the swing out cylinder revolvers, it's much easier to take one big thing and stick it into one big hole than it is to take 6 little things and try to cram them into 6 little holes with any sort of expediency. That's why, generally speaking, law enforcement doesn't use any kind of revolvers anymore. There's probably the odd guy who uses them in a backup, but with the prevalence of things like the SIG P365 and the Glock 43, there's really no need for it anymore, at least in my opinion. But you can't beat, the feeling of an old revolver, at least in my opinion. But overall, I got kind of off topic, but I really like how all of the enemies move. Your movements don't feel overly slow, but they don't feel Call of Duty-esque, where, it feels like you're skating. Like, it's just every movement. It feels like, in a lot of first-person shooters, it'll be like, oh, you're walking, until you hit the sprint button. But in all reality, you're, like, in, like, a bit of a jog. And then when you hit the sprint button, it's like a full-out sprint. What I like about this game quite a bit is that the walking before you utilize the sprinting, it's actually like a walk. It's actually pretty slow. And then you can move into sort of a jog. But then when you hit the sprinting animation, it's not really like a sprint. I don't know if I would describe it as a sprint. I would call it a run. I would call it a run. But here I'm going to be finding the second clue, I believe. If I remember correctly, I found the third clue pretty quickly, and it ended up being like kind of on top of, where the spider was. And here's me just trying to navigate to it because I was really unsure. Yeah, there's an enemy in here. I actually don't know if I saved the clip of me fighting the spider boss a second time, but overall, yeah, I started bleeding. There's a system in this game where you have to kind of nurse certain wounds. You can be poisoned by certain enemies. You can be cut and bleed and have to deal with that before you can really realistically deal with anything else. The situationally placed melee weapons I really enjoy. Earlier, I had used a sledgehammer to break up a door, But this is my first experience with the Hunt Showdown. I really suggest that anybody who follows or watches me give it a shot. I really like it, and I'm looking forward to spending some more time. Thank you very much for watching, and have a good one.